Welkins are basically the all-stars of the Mecha break lineup. They do just about everything, from attacking, defending, dueling, team fights, assassinations, taking objectives, anything you can think of, except for healing. So you might be wondering, what's their weakness? The answer to that is their resource management. Mainly, their energy gauge and their skill cooldowns. As long as they have the energy to work with and the skills are off of their cooldown, Welkin is a major threat to anything in their path. However, lots of Welkin's tools also happen to come with long cooldowns, and they tend to chug through their energy gauge fairly quickly. As such, prolonged fights tend to work unfavorably against him. Welkin is infamously known for its signature spin to win move. However, you should not be spinning to win most of the time for two different reasons. First, spinning doesn't work on airborne targets. Spinning will root you to the ground, so you're just wasting your energy even if you try, even if you box them. Secondly, spinning is heavily on your energy consumption, and you'll be left vulnerable if you use this too much. Most of the time, you should be using basic attacks instead. The DPS is comparable to spinning, a little bit less, but it's much more energy efficient. Basic melee attacks can even be looped infinitely if you use it on the ground. And unlike spin attack, basic attacks are much more accurate at targeting enemies that are trying to escape your onslaught. The times you do want to spin to win depends on your attack target. If you're squaring off against other melee mechs, you absolutely want to be spinning on them, since this is the only method by which Welkin is able to parry physical attacks. But, if you can, do try to avoid fighting other melee mechs entirely. If their skill levels are roughly the same as yours, they'll have more ways to beat you than you can to them. Besides, you have more valuable targets that you can pick off in a fight, so you should focus on them instead. Spinning is also effective against the fortress mechs, like Tricera and Stego, since their defensive forms plant them firmly into the ground. You can quite literally spin circles around them in order to avoid their attacks and damage them at the same time. Win-win. Aside from spinning on top of his foes, Welkin is also well known for bringing the Brazil experience to you. Besides the trusty battle axe, the dueling force field is probably the most important tool in Welkin's arsenal. It lets you single out priority targets to destroy, creating organized chaos in the battlefield and defending objectives for your team. As the name suggests, most players recognize and use the skill to trap others in a box and force them into close quarters combat with Welkin. If you're lucky, the boomerang drones that come with the box will stagger the victim at just the right timing for you to combo them an extra 2 hits, before they have another opportunity to escape. On the other side, the dueling field is an excellent defensive tool to deploy and protect your teammates with, making it great to defend objectives with. In fact, with the base 55,000 HP, it's even bigger and stronger than Hurricane's bubble shield. It just doesn't last as long as Hurricane's. The force field even allows friendly fire to pass through, so you can deploy this to provide extra cover for yourself and for your team to safely blast the enemy at range. Welkin's Auxiliary 2, the Jamming Pulse, to be quite frank, is an odd skill to have. The main feature that people will notice is that the Jamming Pulse will disable the HUD and lock-on capabilities, causing them a mild annoyance. However, this skill only works at melee range, and with the Welkin and their giant battle axe in the face, they probably won't care too much about the HUD. The real value of the skill is the buff cleanse. The Jamming Pulse disables all enemy drones and standard buffs that it comes into contact with, making certain that the enemy is completely powered down and free of any pocket healers when you move in for the kill. For mechs like Hurricane, which completely rely on drone-based abilities, this is an absolute nightmare for them. When paired with the dueling field to isolate priority targets, Welkin's KDA ratios tend to improve dramatically. Welkin's Auxiliary 3, the defense field, is a small energy field that blocks frontal attacks. But don't let its small size fool you. It's got strong energy to keep you alive, and it emits a smoke screen that will completely negate almost all forms of laser attacks, making it ideal to defend your teammates with. Currently, the biggest weakness to this powerful ability is its long cooldown time. The shield has about 10 seconds of active time and a whopping 30 seconds of downtime before you can redeploy it. And honestly, given how strong this shield is, this is completely fair. Maybe even generous. So if you aren't in any excessive danger, and maybe you just need some quick cover, you should make it a habit of deactivating its ability early, so that you can reduce the cooldown time on the skill and redeploy it again when you actually need it. Speaking of times when you'll need a shield, did you know that Welkins make for great shock troopers? If you need to dive bomb on the enemy team, such as a Tricera, a Stego, an Inferno, and a Hurricane all defending the objective, Welkin's the guy to do it. They have the shields to make the approach, the smoke screen to negate third-party laser damage, the moving AoE of the spin attack to deal with multiple enemies, jamming blast to disable the lock-on for extra survivability, and the dueling field to isolate and divide the enemy ranks, causing massive amounts of chaos in the battlefield. Granted, if you dive into a 1v4 or even a 1v6 situation like this, there's a pretty good chance that you don't make it out of this alive. However, there's no other mech that can hold themselves as well as a Welkin in a 1v-many situation. And if you're good enough and smart enough with your skills, you can buy yourself just enough time for the rest of your team to regroup and clean up the rest once you're all done. As a mech that can basically do anything and everything, it might be hard for a Welkin to decide what to do in a fight. However, when it comes to picking targets to kill, Welkin has some clear superiority over others, so you can focus on a few bounties to target in a fight. With immunity to laser damage built into Welkin's Auxiliary 3 shield, and the overall toolkit, Welkin is an absolute nightmare for mechs like Hurricane and Inferno. Those two should be your top priority targets. Taking them out makes the rest of your team a lot safer from the DPS they would normally be outputting. If you catch them on the ground, feel free to spin on top of them for maximum damage. But, if they're smart and flying into the corners of your box, make sure to adapt accordingly and use their basic attacks instead. Even flyers such as Aquila and Sky Raider aren't safe from Welkin's axe, so make sure you put those on your hit list too. Most likely, they'll be flying around your box like a mosquito when you catch them, so it's really not worthwhile to even bother trying to spin on them. Just slap them a few times with the basic attacks and you're good to go. At range, Tricera and Stego are going to be the biggest threats for Welkin to watch out for. But, if you can get up close and personal on them, they are more than fair game for your giant axe. Because they're usually rooted to the ground in their fortress modes, you can spin on them for maximum damage and avoid their fire at the same time. Just to seal the deal, give them a little puff of your Auxiliary 2 smoke, and make it absolutely impossible for them to hit you. Doing this also cancels out any Illuminate buffs that they might be receiving. Very likely. And that, in a nutshell, should just about cover everything you need to get started with Welkin. It might be difficult at first trying to juggle all of your skill cooldowns, and trying to survive while managing your energy, and it'll probably be even more difficult to resist the urge to spin on everything in sight. But, once you master everything Welkin has to offer, I guarantee you that your team will be singing you praises and asking you for carries, and the enemies are going to be calling for a very hard nerf on you specifically. Spin to win, baby.